people have the wrong idea of what it means to be a theologian, and that is we're all theologians. We all have a thought process of God. We all have created some understanding in our minds of God, whether we've done that in deep study or we've done that at a very cursory level. We have all created some theology of who God is. And we may not all be good theologians and we may not all be correct theologians, but we are that.
Hey, All Things listeners, I have some fun news to share. I have a bookstore. Through a sweet partnership with 10 of those, I have an online store where you can go to find all the books I recommend on this podcast, plus all my books in one place. Here's why I'm so excited about the bookstore and my partnership with 10 of those. Everything in the store is handpicked and points to Jesus, so you won't have to worry about accidentally purchasing something that you later regret. You can also feel good about sending the link to others. Everything in the store is always discounted. Seriously, check out the very low prices. All shipping is $1 all the time. I know we're all addicted to free shipping, but $1 to support a quality, gospel-centered store is more than worth it. And the profits from 10 of those go to support global missions. You know I love that. Again, so worth it. And finally, shopping at my store is a great way for you to support All Things, plus my other projects. So be sure to regularly check the links in my show notes and go book shopping. Welcome to All Things, everybody. I am so excited to bring to you today my friend, Missie Branch. Missie and I met last summer, and I have so appreciated learning from her, both in person and from afar. So, Missie, thanks for being on this episode of All Things.
What an honor. The feeling is mutual. It's been so beautiful to learn from you as well, my friend.
Oh, thank you, Missy. Well, this episode is going to air on the first Thursday of March. So we're sort of kicking off Women's History Month in the month of March. And something that I
Yes.
read in your bio. Now you have a lengthy bio. I know that you are on staff at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. You're also completing a degree there that we're going to get into in a minute. But
Okay.
one of the first things that your bio says is that you love to encourage women to see themselves as theologians, that they are disciples first and foremost of the Lord. So since we're kicking off Women's History Month, since you and I are women, we have a lot of female listeners. Tell me what you mean by that. That is, I think, your first love in ministry. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that as we start.
Yeah, I think not women, I think people have the wrong idea of what it means to be a theologian. And that is, we're all theologians. We all have a thought process of God. We all have created some understanding in our minds of God, whether we've done that in deep study or we've done that at a very cursory level. We have all created some theology of who God is. And we may not all be good theologians and we may not all be correct theologians, but we are that. And so when you have the opportunity to help someone to understand what it means to have the right theology about the true and living God, that changes everything about their lives, right? And so that's why it's a passion of mine to say, no, theology is not just thick books and big words.
Mhm.
It's the studying and the understanding and the knowledge of the true and living God who has put the breath in your lungs and who has created you and formed you for a specific work and purpose. And I think that changes everything. So I'm like,
Mhm.
before you worry about being a wife and before you worry about being a mom and before you worry about your life's work, understand what it means to be the Lord's daughter and to be cut out and knit for something, because I truly believe godly women make great everything. So like learn
Mm.
to be a godly woman and then you're going to make a great all those things.
I love that. I love that foundation. So good as we kick off this month, as we kick off this conversation. Everybody's a theologian, so let us understand the God in whose image we are created,
Yes.
and everything
Yes.
flows from there. That's so good. Okay,
Mhm.
Missy, tell everybody all the hats that you wear. You're a busy woman. You are busy about the kingdom, really. So many good kingdom things that you're involved in. So just so they know a little bit more about you, what are the roles that you have right now?
Okay, well, I'm a wife. I'm married. We've been married for a long time, and I'll leave that alone. I'm the mom of four, and I take a lot of pride in that. I'm excited because I know it's a gift, and that's part of my life's work. But I also work here at Southeastern. I serve here as the Assistant Dean of Students to Women and the Director of Graduate Life, and it's a long title because at small campuses, everybody does a lot of things, but it
Mm,
really means that I get to speak into discipleship and curriculum and even discipline issues. It's kind of like all of the information that students are learning in their classrooms, we're giving them opportunities to integrate that into real life and to work alongside the local church, not against it, to help them integrate into the community and then to send them off into the world to be missionaries in so many different ways. And then
Hmm.
I also am currently chairman of the Board of Trustees at Lifeway, which all of the things, all of the hats I'm wearing right now, I really feel like Esther or Joseph, like I've done nothing to achieve these. And clearly it was the Lord. So I'm just honored for the opportunities. And I see them as just ways to bring more glory to the Lord with what he's given me. And so that's really all. And then I also do a podcast with my friend Courtney. We do Women and Work as a podcast. It's a ministry that she created, and she asked me to be on the podcast, and we co-host that, and it's a lot of fun. We actually plan on having you on our podcast, so yeah, so it's fun. And then I think that's all. I don't know. I think that's all I do. Oh, and I'm finishing up my degree
Yeah,
here
don't
at
forget that
Southeastern.
part. You're also
Yes,
a
almost
student.
done. Almost done. So
Wow. Well, okay. I love all of those hats. I mean, you are involved in some exciting ministries, some definitely, passions of my own. So I love to hear about that. Tell me more about the degree that you're finishing because it's ethics, culture, and theology, right? Or maybe
yes,
those words are in a
yes.
different order.
No, but it's the same. Yeah, those are the words: ethics, theology, and
Yeah,
culture.
those
Yes.
three together. Why are those three together? What's the degree all about?
You know, I think, like I said, we're all theologians, right? So let's have correct theology. I am a huge person who really loves to get to the heart of why people make the decisions they make and why people think the way they think and why people behave the way they behave. So the ethics is really what is that it's the basis of all of those whys. And then culture is how do the decisions that we make and the ethical baseline behind everything and our theology affect the culture that we create and that we participate in. And
Mm.
so being able to be trained in those areas has been so life-giving. I always say that my degree is not for some future thing, but it's been very relevant in the work that I'm doing right now. So it's been great.
Hmm. Yes. I love the overlap of the integration, really, of culture,
Yes.
ethics, and theology. Really just where the rubber hits the road, how we live
Yes.
this faith out, who we are, and
Yes.
who God has made us to be in the time and place that He deemed for us to live, and how we steward that and care for that and move in that.
Yeah, I have
Um,
loved it.
yeah, just selfishly, because I'm also in seminary, how are you doing
Mhm.
it?
Oh, girl.
Practical. How you're almost at the end. I'm still way at the beginning. How have you managed being a student plus the other things that you do?
I'll be honest, a lot my personality is to be super driven and just go, 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 go. But
Yeah.
I really have had to accept the fact that I am finite and that the
Mhm.
Lord did that on purpose. And because if the Lord made it so that I'd be finite, I have to operate in that. And so there are seasons when it was like, okay, you can do this. You can pull off all of these classes. And there were seasons when it was like, drop the class and focus on what you need right now. Like when the
Yeah.
pandemic hit and our kids were all coming home at the drop of a hat and they were
Mm.
all going to be homeschooled, it was like, Missy, you can't be a full-time student right now, and that's okay.
Right.
And
Right.
so giving myself the grace to say this season I can do this much has helped.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That's a good word for every listener. We are
yeah,
finite and we are in, unique seasons. So what has the Lord given you to accomplish for this season?
yes, and it's okay. And I'm not in a race, even though I'm competitive by nature. I'm not in a race, but we can do this. We can do
I can just relate to everything you're saying. It's kind of killing me.
yes. So,
Well, I'm encouraged that you're near the finish because it's like, okay, it is
yes.
possible. Apparently, it's possible.
It I promise you. And I mean, like, what it took to fire up these brain cells to be able to do this and everything. It was like
Yes.
but it's been so rewarding. So I encourage you, the journey, take the journey.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, well, I want to turn to a current event and get your take
Please.
on it because here you are working in a theological institution. You're in a Christian setting, you've got your hands in different Christian things, you yourself are a student. So let's talk about the revival that is happening at Asbury University.
Yeah.
I trust that our listeners know what I'm talking about because it's even made its way into secular media. We're even seeing
Mhm.
headlines about it in the secular news. So, Missy, what do you make of it? I know that's a huge open ended question. We can take it a few different ways, but what are your first thoughts about it?
I think it's really easy for us to be so academic with the way we view God that we forget
Mm,
that there is a spirit that is living and active and moving. And this living and active and moving spirit can do what he wants the way he wants to do it. And it
mm,
doesn't matter what we think about it. It doesn't matter if we approve of it. And it doesn't matter if it looks the way we think it should. And so I think the spirit of the Lord can move in ways that blow our minds. I've seen
mm,
it. We've seen it. If you're a Christian long enough, walk with Jesus
yeah.
long enough, and you'll see it. And so when you hear revival break out, or however you want, I know that they're not even comfortable with saying revivals breaking out because they want to be very careful. But
Mm,
whenever you hear something like that, I'm just like, Lord, have your way. Do the thing in the hearts and minds of these people that none of the words that seminary and books and conferences and services could do, right? And
mm.
that's the Holy Spirit working in people. And so, listen, I all I can say is I wish I was laid up in there praying with people right now.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. There is something, and I know people are driving across the country and going and joining themselves. I think probably by the time this episode airs, sounded like Asbury's getting ready to kind of close their doors a little bit and return
Yes.
to saying these
Yes.
kids got to get back to class. So
Yes.
by the time this episode airs, I think that will have happened. But I understand people's desire to hit the
Be a
road and
part
go
of that.
see what it's like.
Yes. I come from a tradition. I was raised in the Black Baptist church, and my mother is a prayer warrior. And I remember our church, we grew up, they would have revival services, but the revival service that was supposed to end at maybe 7 o'clock or whatever, when prayer would break out sometimes, you would watch people pray before the Lord and lament and bring him everything. And that 1 hour prayer led to 2 hours and 3 hours and 4 hours. And next thing you know, I remember being little and being like, I don't know about this Holy Spirit because he is making this stuff long, right?
Yes, I'm sure.
but, but to watch people be so captured by the Lord that they are pouring everything out and feeling like they're being replenished and refreshed is just incredible. And so, like, I'm not skeptical of that type of thing because I've
Hmm.
watched it happen. And I do believe that the Lord works through those types of moments. And I do think that they're unique, and I don't think that they need to be put on, and I don't think we need to try to conjure them, but I do believe that they happen and they're real and sincere.
Yeah. When you were young and watching that happen in your church and observing your mom, who you say is just a prayer warrior,
Hmm.
what drives that? Because I'm struck even as you say that. Personally, my prayer life can be limited and dry and without
Mm.
desperation. And I
Hmm.
see that so often in the churches that I'm a part of as well, that prayer is often an afterthought or the way that you wrap up the meeting. And I think
Mm.
we often want to feel differently about prayer, and
Yeah.
yet often we don't. So what causes people to be driven to pray like that?
I'll be honest, for my mother, it was struggle.
Hmm.
Struggle, struggle. My mom's a single mom, and
Hmm.
she is a first generation Christian. So she believed that the help that she needed and the hope that she had was found in Christ. And so
Hmm.
she lamented to the Lord like a husband, and she expected from the Lord like a daughter, and she hoped in the Lord like a believer. And I know that to be true now. And so for her, she would find so much joy in prayer. Like I could watch the range of emotions in my mom and see, even
Yeah.
hear it in her voice as she prayed. And so I really do think it started with an association with struggle, and it became just a
Mm.
love for her, a dependence on her. I say to my kids a lot, a Christian without prayer life is like having access to like an ATM card, like a black card, right? But yet you're running around shaking your change jar. Like you like
Hmm.
you can get all of that, but you're living with this meagerness. So she
Mm.
really has discipled me, and I would say struggle is how it began. Um, but now just a passion and a love for Jesus is how she sustained it. And so I
Mm.
think the Lord it doesn't have to just be struggle, but I do think there has to be a point in your life where your prayer life is about dependence
Yeah.
and not just routine.
Yeah.
And the
That's so
moment that
good.
becomes dependence, it changes things.
Yeah. And I do think that is at the root of a lot of our prayerlessness is we are relatively wealthy and healthy and self-sufficient, at least so we think, right? Like we know
Hmm.
it's the Lord's who gives us the breath in our lungs, but we often function as if we are self-made. And so
Right.
that is a
Yeah.
helpful correction. Do you think that
Yeah.
that is what, I mean, you're around young people there at the seminary, and then you have your own teens and young adult
Hmm.
children.
Hmm.
Do you think that that generation is desperate? Is there struggle there? Is that what's behind what kept the students there at chapel and kept them from leaving?
You know, I have heard that the number one streaming music right now is worship music. Like that's
Mm,
what is being
wow.
streamed more than any other music. And I think that
Wow.
it's because that there is a group, that there's a generation who they want answers. And I think the
Yeah.
kind of practical, dogmatic, critical, um, just do it because I said so that we were able to deal with and accept is no longer, they're like, it doesn't work. I want to know
Mm,
why. I want to understand. I want to feel a part of something. I want to be connected to something bigger than me. I want to make a difference. I want to change the world.
mm,
And so we see this drive for connected to something bigger than themselves. The hard part is when they're connected to the wrong thing. And so it's
mm,
our job, obviously, to bring them to the true and living God so they can be actual theologians. But they have a desire to be connected, to serve, and to understand in ways that we've never even had to consider. You know
mm,
what I'm saying? And so I think that that's why revival would be a thing now with this generation, because they want something, they want answers, and they don't want it to just be education, which is why the answer for
mm,
them is not always college and you know what
mm.
I'm saying, and go to medical school, but the answer for them is work. So how can I influence and how can I create, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I'm struck by, and I'll be honest, I've kind of stayed away a bit from the news about the Asbury revival, just a
Hmm.
bit, wanting to just appreciate it and enjoy it, but not
I understand
have
that.
my
Yes.
perception of it sullied by various perspectives.
Yes.
So I haven't been super in depth in my reading about it. But one thing that I heard right from the start is that the guy who delivered the message before the revival broke out felt like his message was very ordinary and even kind of a failure, like that it wasn't anything special. And I personally, as somebody who speaks and teaches the Bible, I was thrilled to hear that. I absolutely
Yes.
adore that news because it means, as you've already said, the Spirit will move when the Spirit will
Yes.
move.
Yes.
And it's not
And
dependent on us.
I mean, and like, doesn't the Bible say that God will use the foolish things of this world to
Yep.
confound the wise? Like, just the idea, I had not read that. And because I was taking the same posture as you, Jen. I kind of don't want to hear just endless critiques of it. I want
Yeah.
to be, to see the sweetness in it, right? And I'm sure that
Hmm.
there are some. I'm not knocking that, but
Right, right.
I hadn't heard that, but I'm with you. I think that there's something so beautiful about the fact that he didn't think, "Yeah, I'm going to cause revival.
Yeah,
It's me. Guess what? Did you hear
right.
what I said?" But he's like, "No, so that has to be the Lord
Yep.
because I was
Hmm.
not." It's like Gideon, how the Lord stripped him all the way down. So at the end of the day, the only person getting glory is me.
Yes, I
Yes.
love that. I absolutely
Mhm.
love that. So, yeah, as you and I have both already admitted, we're not super into the news about it. Haven't really,
Right.
devoured the critiques, but I know they're out there because I
Oh,
see the
yes.
art, I see the headlines come across my screen,
Oh,
I see the
yes.
tweets come through my thread,
Well, it's
even on
2023,
Instagram,
so
right?
yeah.
Like everybody's got a hot
Yes.
take about this
Yes.
revival. And as you've said, probably some of the critiques are really good, right? I mean, the fact is, humans are involved, so some
Right.
things are going to be wrong, right?
Right.
We all fall short. Um, but Missy, since you're pursuing this culture, ethics, and theology degree, you are in
Mhm.
the midst of a lot of Christian institutions and culture. It
Mhm.
seems to me that we are so quick to be critical,
Yeah.
that in the church, we really have an overwhelming critical spirit. And I mean to say that, like, it seems like we have crossed a line where our reflex isn't to be critical thinkers, but it's to be critical of the hearts and
Yeah.
motives of our brothers and sisters. Can you
Yes.
help us think about that? Why are we the way that we are when it comes to this?
Our enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy, right? And
Yeah.
it sounds so overly simple, but it's almost like the enemy, all he had to do was throw up a lob and we just caught it and took it down the court and we've turned it into a whole game as opposed to
Hmm.
recognizing just how much division is caused by our lack of critical thinking and our investing in just thinking as critical people.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I do think that that is a miss of culture right now. I remember saying and hearing people say, I know he said such and such, but because I know him, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, or I'm going to
Yeah.
assume he means this. And the
Yeah.
idea of relationship gave us a closeness and a proximity that allowed me to look past what I would have ordinarily been offended by, or
Yeah.
the idea that this person is my brother or my sister. So I'm not going to automatically assume that everything they say is designed to hurt me. And
Mm.
I think that also, I do think that that requires a maturity that I
Yeah.
think we've allowed it to be okay that we're not enforcing or not enforcing. 'Cause I think that's wrong. You can't enforce maturity, but that we're allowing it to be okay that we don't even operate in this almost
Yeah. Yeah. We don't
adulthood,
expect it
right?
from each other. Hmm.
Yes, where you're
Hmm.
just like, well, she said that, but I didn't get to hear the whole thing, so let me
Hmm.
at least hear it. Or, you know, there are two sides to every story.
Hmm.
I don't care what you tell me. Now
Yeah.
there are some things that are cut and dry. If somebody hit a car. But but you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
we don't give room for I wasn't there and I didn't hear it all. And so
Mm.
I reserve the ability to make a rash judgment or a full judgment until I get more details. And but yet we will give the benefit of the doubt like that to people we love. And I think that
Yeah.
that's the hard part. That's the hard part. You're like, well, then if you could trust this guy because he's your brother, why can't we trust that guy who's supposed to be your brother?
Hmm.
And I think that we've lost
Hmm.
that in culture.
Yeah. How do you think we get it back? I mean, I can imagine every listener right now is going, "Yes, this is all right. This is all true." And I think if we're honest, we have to confess that we're part of it too, that we
All of
fall
us.
in the same way, right? But I think we are sort of fed up with cancel culture and deep division and these polarized different factions within the church. Nobody
Yes.
likes it. So how do we move away from that?
I would refer us, in my mind, it's a full circle conversation.
Mm,
We need more dependence on the Spirit.
yeah.
We need to stop being so involved, like enamored. That's the word I'm looking for. So
Mm,
enamored with influencers and
yeah.
pastors and their sound bites and creating a platform to get people to listen to our sound bites. We need to go back to being dependent on the Spirit. There were
Mm,
years when you'd be like, I don't know if this is right. I got to pray about it. You know what I mean? And that just sounds so obscure. But really, that dependence was how we made decisions. That dependence
mm,
is whether or not am I willing to cut this relationship off because of that? I don't know. I should be really prayerful about that before I just
mm.
make a decision and go and end this relationship or quit this job or walk out of that business or, you know what I'm saying? Or say
Yeah.
no to this person.
Yeah.
I do think that we've gotten rid of the need for the Spirit. And so because of
Mm.
that, we just make decisions and we just say things and we just do things and we just argue and we just cancel.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we are really quick to Google, an article about it or who's on what side of it or where our champions, lie on a certain
Right.
issue rather than praying. And it really that
Yeah.
does go full circle back to what we're talking about in terms of the revival at Asbury.
Right.
Just a struggle and a prayer dependence and a desire for the Spirit to be leading us and empowering us and showing us the way.
Exactly right. Exactly
Wow.
right.
Well, let me ask you this. With your focus on culture, ethics, and theology, I would love to hear from you two sides of the same coin.
Okay.
Where do you think we in the church are doing well in terms of
Mm.
influencing culture well when it comes to ethics? We're applying our theology well. And where do you think we are falling short? You can start with either side of that coin, whichever one you want to try first. But I would love to hear from you. Where are we getting it right and where are we getting it wrong?
I well, first of all, we are getting things right. And
Mm,
so I think it's so worth celebrating
mm,
that we are doing things right. As a friend of mine recently tweeted, no, a friend of mine recently sent me a picture of a tweet, and the tweet had a very negative spin on some things in church.
mm.
And they said, Missy, what are your thoughts? And I said to them, it sounds like that life has been hard and things have been hard, but they have not trusted the Holy Spirit to finish the work. And I'm not in judge. They're in a hard. This person, I'm not in their space. I'm not doing what they're
Hmm.
doing. So believe me, I'm not saying that I know. But what I'm saying is what the tweet, the little caricature, the few words that we got from them did not seem to imply this is hard, but I trust that the Lord is going to finish this race. And
Yeah.
so if I was to say things we're doing negatively, is that we are not representing the Lord well on any social media platform. We're not representing
Mm,
Him well in our politics. We're not
mm.
representing Him well. We're not presenting a beautiful unified front for the world on what
Right.
it means to be Christians. And
Right.
we can disagree on so many things and that be okay, but yet
Yes.
the Bible simply says they will know that we are
Yeah.
Christians by our love
Mm.
for each other. And that
Yeah.
love is not for how much you've given to a charity, but they'll look at the way we love each other and say, oh, they're Christians.
Mm.
And right now, girl, if you
Yeah.
look at some of these social medias, you're not, or things like that, you're not seeing that. So I think that that's part of it. Our biblical ethic is not enough to drive us to say, I'm not going to say that publicly. I'm going to
Yeah.
go confront them. I'm going to go pray about it. And I do think that a thing that we could probably work more on is probably putting action to the things that we're saying we want to do and be. In the church, we say we want to be more. Um, uh, I'm trying to use the correct word. I don't want to just throw out any word. We say we want to be a church that represents heaven here on earth. Every
Yeah.
tribe, every tongue, every nation. We want the church to be a space where you can come and you know that God has opened the doors freely to you and you
Mm.
are wanted. And I think we can say that, but I don't know that we've necessarily counted the cost of that
Mm.
because there's a cost to that. You know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
I do think it's sometimes that's a miss for us that we are not necessarily able to let go of some of the areas that we maybe need to let go of power or prestige or my voice has to actually blend in instead of be the only one heard or
Yeah.
my name is going to now be next to somebody's and not above somebody's or my name might need to come off for a season or you know what I'm saying, those types of
Hmm.
things. So I
Hmm.
think that's a miss. But as far as
Yeah.
wins, there are wins, and I want to end on wins. I think I'd rather do
Love
that.
it.
The church has been mobilizing missionaries around the world, and the United States, our church has been mobilizing missionaries around the world, and that is a win.
Yeah.
The gospel is spreading, and there are people who are committed to the gospel being spread, and I work here amongst them, and um, it's just so beautiful. When I went on the missions trip, one of the things I saw was that people will go anywhere with nothing for Jesus.
Mm.
I'm blown away by that.
Yeah.
I'm blown away by that. I will also say that it's really beautiful to see the church come together to serve the world when it comes to disaster relief
Mm.
and things like that. Like the church has stepped up in so many ways and it's been beautiful. And it's been
Yeah.
an honor to be a part of that, to give, to go serve, to send people, to all the different ways that we can be a blessing. And I do think that we've done a good job of acknowledging some of the more negative things of our past, our history.
Mm.
Like we've
Mm.
said it, we've offered apologies, and I think
Mm.
that's a step forward. That is a
Mm,
step in the right direction. And if you refuse to acknowledge that, then you
mm,
don't get to be able to take the second step. Like you've got to acknowledge one step to take another.
yeah.
I think we've done a good job of even opening spaces and allowing people who ordinarily would not have particular jobs or positions or whose voice wouldn't ordinarily be heard. We've begun to see that happen. And whether that has
Mm,
come through people pushing the door down or through the spirit moving through the hearts of men, I'm not going to judge that part. I'm saying we're seeing it happen. And so
mm,
I think that that's a beautiful thing. And then another thing is it's been beautiful to see Christians really be willing to embrace the immigrant and the
mm.
poor
Yeah.
and the you know what I'm saying, the
Yeah.
lost in our these
Yes.
communities all over the country. Having conversations with people who are like, yeah, I'm really investing in this Sudanese community or this Ethiopian community or this Latino community and these people, and to watch them give the gospel to people who would have never heard it had they not come to our country is beautiful. And so
Mm,
before we only cancel the church, there is so much to celebrate. And that's because
mm.
the Spirit of the Lord is alive and moving and active and working. And it's beautiful to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Missy, you have lifted our eyes, and I'm grateful. I hope that the listeners take away from this just a refreshed desire to lean on the Lord and to invite the
Mm,
Spirit to move in their lives and through them and in their faith communities. And I love what you've just left us with, that it is worth it to
yes.
follow Jesus with nothing, and to
Yes.
bring him into these various communities. Where can people keep up with you if they want to hear more from you? Where can they follow your work or hear your words going forward?
Yeah, well, my podcast, Women in Work podcast, it's on all of the different platforms, and I post from time to time on social media. I have adult children who are like, "Mom, come on, you've got to say more." So maybe there, but really, Women in Work, and I've yeah, that's really it. I just talk it in private, less talk in public, but
Well, I'm grateful that you have lent your voice to us. Thank you for being on All Things today.
it's an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, everybody, for listening to All Things today. Come back next Thursday as we continue on through Women's History Month, focusing on various issues that women face in the church today. Thanks for listening to All Things with Jen Oshman, where we look at current events and trends through a Christian lens. All things were created through Jesus and for Jesus, so we're seeking to apply His word to what's happening here and now.